Hi, guys, and welcome to the Rare Wellness Podcast, the podcast designed to help you heal holistically and give you the tools that you need to thrive. We're making it easy to understand medicine and wellness with practical steps from the experts, one podcast at a time. The only thing that we ask is that if this episode helps you live just a little bit better and more aligned, that you'll leave us a review and you'll share this with a friend. That's all that we ask so that we can continue to provide you with free, valuable knowledge from the experts of well-being. Today's episode, we are going to be diving into the transformative world of somatic movement and its incredible impact on healing. Imagine a practice that doesn't just focus on how your body looks, but how it feels from the inside out. That's kind of what somatic movement is all about. I feel like somatic movement recently has been like a big buzz on social media and in therapy and on Instagram. So today we're really going to be taking a deep dive of what it means to become really deeply attuned to your body's internal sensations, fostering a profound connection between your mind and body. I'm excited to learn more about somatic movement because I still have so many questions on what exactly does this mean, what it means to truly live and feel deeply. So in this episode, we're going to be uncovering the origins of the principles of somatic movement and then explore how this practice can integrate into our lives and elevate our overall well-being and guide us on a path to healing. Today, we're going to be talking with a guest that we've had on this podcast before, Karla. Karla Parbon is the movement manager and one of the lead yoga and bar instructors at Rare Wellness, as well as a doctorate candidate at Gonzaga University, where she is studying how to apply the concept of how movement can be a source of healing and restoration for the individual and the collective, blending art, spirituality, and the human experience. She also specializes in somatic movement methods, including Alexander technique, Laban movement analysis, and the Feldenkrais method. When Karla isn't at Rare, you'll find her at Gonzaga University as faculty in the theater and dance department, where she's been teaching various styles of dance technique, anatomy and physiology for dancers, and dance on film. Karla has been teaching yoga for many years now, and she's been with us here at Rare Wellness since January of 2023. And when she's not busy teaching yoga, bar, or dance, you'll find Karla snuggling with their family pet, Gus, who's a Flemish giant bunny, and spending time with her husband, Josh, and her two college-age boys, Jace and Cade. I still want to meet that bunny, by the way, Karla.
He is so much fun. Gus is just a huge ball of love. And I love having bunnies. I grew up with dogs and we had a cat and all that. But man, bunnies have my heart for sure.
Maybe we'll have to do an episode where we bring Gus onto the show and he does the episode with you.
I don't know if he'd sit long enough because he's still somewhat of a baby, but you know, he could make a cameo. Let's put it that way.
So let's dive right into it. I'm really excited to explore this topic today. For a lot of our listeners who maybe aren't aware, what is somatic movement and what is it?
Yeah, so somatic movement or somatic practices is really, it boils down to a brain-body connection. So dance is considered a somatic practice, especially if you're looking at more of the modern dance discipline or contemporary, or you think about yoga, that is a mind-body. So the somatic side is like the source of connecting the mind and the body. And in turn, most somatic practitioners believe that that then creates kind of a, I don't know if the word portal's right, but this space for who you're meant to be to kind of rise to the surface, right? So in yoga, they think of higher self. If you think of philosophy, you think of like that being. If you think on more of a religious side, right? That's your getting close to how you were created by the divine, all those things. So when we are disconnected on this tangible side of things, right? The cognitive, the conscious, and the physical, the kinesthetic, that's just the beginning of who we are as human beings. And so by creating that space for those two to communicate better, then it opens up our ability to communicate to our more metaphysical existence.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like what you're saying makes so much sense. And yet I think about like how disconnected we are. Like, I feel like we're a really cerebral society. Like everything is like head, like we live in our heads. we scroll on our phones, like everything's like so mental, but like I feel like we've lost this like connection with our bodies. And I'm just curious, like why, I guess before we even dive into more somatic stuff, just like why do we need to occupy our bodies? Why is it important?
Ooh, that's a great question. And right now, as I'm working towards my dissertation process, I've been doing a lot of research actually on hermeneutics, which is the study of language. And I'm going to be looking at how movement can be a form of language. And in the dance world, the great, amazing Martha Graham says that dance is the hidden language of the soul, right? And so, really understanding that movement, whether it's dance, and dance is a categorical understanding of specific movements of the body, right? So, it doesn't have to necessarily look like stage ready, but it's just moving your body, right? So, it's this rhythmic experience. However it looks to you, that's the only thing that matters. But if we think about the body as being a form of language of understanding what it means to be human, we then create this space for our bodies to be a source of conscious repatterning. How do we then begin to heal? And consciousness is really this presence, experiencing, being present as a being. And a lot of, you go back in philosophy and they talk about just the logic and how important that is. And then you move into from Aristotle and Descartes and Husserl, and then you get into Heidegger, and further on from there, after Heidegger, who's probably one of my favorite philosophers, he really was influential in saying, hold on, this isn't just conscious beings do whatever what they want, right? Damn everyone else. Yep. He's like, no, our role, and especially as human beings, we have this obligation to be these stewards in giving all life, all things in existence, this space to present itself. And so I really see that as human beings have this responsibility, and human beings are unique because we have language. We have language that can help us communicate and relate, right? And so how can our bodies participate in that hermeneutic experience between person to person? And so I think that's, to answer your question the long way around, is that I really think the body is an important source of how we relate to one another through its type of language.
Well, and so my mom is a linguist. She speaks 5 languages. So my whole life has been surrounded by languages. And it's so interesting because as much as language is verbal, it's nonverbal. There is so much more said. Even for people listening, how many times have you had a conversation with your significant other, with a friend, right? And you're like, I'm fine. But you can tell by someone's body language. It's like, you're not fine. Or like sometimes what your body says is so much, it reads so much more between the lines than like just our words, right? So everything you're saying is like, just from a common sense perspective, I'm like, that makes so much sense. And then I think about how many times, as you were talking about like the body and movement as its own form of language, I'm like, how many times does our body maybe even speak things that our mind hasn't like comprehended yet? Like how many times do our bodies like show us like I've noticed even for myself, shame, like when I'm constantly hunched over, or the ways that like maybe like my body is expressing to me, maybe you're not confident, or maybe you're still operating from like a worldview of shame, and I may not even know it. So I think it's just like so interesting, and I guess explain to me, just to have a better understanding, like there's multiple parts of somatic movement, right? Like it's like the observation of like, what is your body telling you? And then using your body to hack into, like you said, how do I bring myself into a state of expansion or a portal of openness?
Every somatic practice was created out of a need for something. So if you think of yoga, this is a century-old tradition, right? And that was created out of the Buddhist and Hindu tradition to be more at peace, right? if you think of like Laban or Alexander, those two techniques, they were created because one couldn't, one was struggling with being able to speak or sing, right? They noticed their voice was going and that their body was failing them for what they needed to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then like Laban had some physical ailments. Some of them went through like major car accidents or things like that, right? So something went wrong and they said, okay, what can I do to help myself heal and get as whole as I possibly can? And so that's where then their various like formulations of what somatic means to them was created. So Laban created what's called 8 effort actions. And I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but when you were talking about, you know, you like your arms crossed and things like that, right? He believed that every form of human movement can be broken down into these specific 8 effort actions. And they're things like ring, press, dab, punch, things like that. And they all had these qualities within that. And so for him, as a person who was then creating dances or choreography, that became his language and his notation system. He actually created this grid. He was fascinated with the crystal shape and how the human body functions within that, right? The cube. And so that to me is really why somatic practices, one, were started, and two, why they keep going, right?
Yeah.
They haven't died out. They're almost gaining more momentum now because of what you were saying earlier when you were introducing us, is that there's a disconnect here, right? Technology is beginning to steal this opportunity for us to be whole people. And going back to our sources of communication and what that means. There's this idea and philosophy that's called reductionism, and it's pretty much just like removing everything and re-looking at it like a blank slate of sorts.
Yeah.
Removing your biases and all that. And what somatic practices do, the more you practice them, allow you to do that, is reduce all the noise so that you can really observe what you're experiencing, what the problem is. And then that's when you can make the more conscious choices about where you need to go from there.
Yeah. Today's podcast is brought to you by the Premium Center for Regenerative Medicine and Stem Cell Therapy in the Northwest Center for Regenerative Medicine. Get back to the activities that you love without needing surgery. You can book your appointment at nwc4rm.com. Again, that's nwc4rm.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Rare Wellness Supplements. You can head over to rareplanethealth.com to get your supplements. My personal favorite is the premium fish oil filled with omega-3s. Again, you can go to rareplanethealth.com and get the supplements that you most need to support your health and wellness today. Lastly, this podcast is also brought to you by Rare Wellness. Rare Wellness is located on the South Hill in Spokane and is one center that provides all the wellness tools that you could need. Whether you're looking for a hands-on, premium, intimate yoga studio with a therapeutic emphasis, bar classes, Tai Chi classes, if you're looking for skincare treatments, injectable, hydrofacial, microneedling, organic spa treatments, if you're wanting to get therapeutic massaged or book functional medicine appointments to get down to the root cause of your inflammation, Rare Wellness is the place for you. Whatever your wellness needs are, they have it covered. So to book your appointment today, go to rarewellness.com. Again, go to rarewellness.com and mention this podcast for 10% off when you're booking. Okay, time to get back to the episode. Because there's like the first thing that came to mind when I heard you say all of that was like, there's a difference. And I've truly experienced this in my own life as well. There's a difference between like going through the motions and like being okay, and then like feeling life deeply. There's a big difference in like being numb to life and then actually like embodying your emotions and like feeling the aliveness, I guess, to life. And it's just like, it's so cool that there is ways to hack that, like that there's ways to access that. And so I've heard that there's like multiple ways that you can use somatic healing. Like you can use it to regulate your nervous system, right? You can use it to process trauma through your body. And then you can use it to move into a state of expansion and openness. Am I like right on that, or on the right track? That was just like what I have heard.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're right on track. That the beauty of somatic in that word is that there's many different ways to experience the reason for why somatic exists,
Mm-hmm.
right? Reconnecting the brain and the body, that is a neurological process, and um, that is a rebalancing of the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so in the world of psychology, they would use more like somatic experiencing, where they would take you through various imagery exercises. And I am not a specialist in this, so if I'm speaking a little bit out of it, but my understanding is that it really has to do with using our consciousness to begin to kind of re-experience those events in our lives, to go back and to approach it differently so that we can then sift through all that
Mm-hmm.
information so that we can release some of that tension, right? Sometimes you have to go back to the beginning to understand what was there in the first place. And a lot of that is about when you went through those experiences, you had a biomechanical response. Yes, you had feelings, and that's important, but there were chemicals created in your body in that time. And so, if we don't do our due diligence to really experience fully through all of that, it's going to make a home in your body, and
Mm-hmm.
it's going to find the sticky deep fascial tissue, and it's going to settle there, which then leads to that tension, and which leads to then inflammation and problematic areas in the body. So, like in yoga, especially, we talk a lot about like heart openers or hip
Yeah.
openers. And a lot of that's because those are the most fascial dense areas of the body. And so statistically, that's where we hold majority of the chemical leftovers from a traumatic, positive or negative event. So there could be wonderful things, but you're still creating a ton of chemical responses to something amazing as well as something that's horrible. You still have to do your due diligence as a holistic being and take the time to really decompress. We don't do that anymore. We just jump from one thing to another. And
Mm-hmm.
so that to me is the biggest role of somatics.
And then we wonder why like chronic pain is like soaring through society, or illnesses that are popping out of nowhere, when it's like the pace of life has changed so much to when people used to have their own gardens, or like even when we had cities, it was like shopping at the farmer's market. You know what I'm saying? This is like slow pace of living that's just completely disappeared. Now it's like everything I need is instant gratification at my fingertips. If I need groceries, I'm not even going to go to the store. Like they're ordered to my house. And it's like, yeah. It also, how cool is it that like these ancient practices are now being proved by science and backed by science? And it's like, wow, like the wisdom. Sometimes I think about Karla, I'm like, how, like, like it just, I'm in awe of like the spirituality and like the wisdom and ancient practices that for a while people were like, oh, like that's woo woo, that's fake, that's this, that's that. And it's like now it's coming back, and it's like science is backing these things that have been around for centuries. And sometimes I'm just amazed. I'm like, how did humans know? Like how did they know back then? And is there more wisdom? I don't know. I just think about that sometimes. Yeah.
Well, and I think that goes back to we as human beings are a very special species in the fact that however you see it is a soul or all that, is that there is something more than meets the eye, honestly, right?
Yep.
We do, yes, we do have our various like animalistic instincts and desires, but there's more than that, right? We don't just live to eat and sleep and all that. We desire to be in a
Yeah.
relationship. We desire to learn. We desire to
Vitality.
know. Vitality, right? Purpose, right?
Yeah.
I don't think many animals walk around going, I wonder what my purpose is,
No.
right? So that's unique to human beings, which is a really beautiful thing. And I think that that's something that we, like you said, where did that go? Why, it was so prevalent for such a long time, and then somewhere we've kind of lost it, right? And I think it's because we went through these various historical movements of enlightenment and logic and all that really took precedence over things. And then you'd add in the church into our history. And then there's all that on top of it too. That's a whole other podcast as well. But I think, to understand certain things, a lot of times those who were trying to figure it out felt like they had to get rid of something else instead of add to. And so that's where I think we're in that place now, is that we've come to the realization that logic can take us so far. My ability to think myself through things can take me so far. My ability to numb myself can take me so far. And that to me is the biggest kind of scale problem in our world today, is that people don't understand that being uncomfortable is a part of being human, right? And that if we could change that, right?
So good. Yeah. Being uncomfortable. Right? I just feel like being uncomfortable is a part of, wow. Yes.
And it's a part of, and I think a lot of times we've changed how our consciousness sees things. And a lot of times how we've begun to develop our, like, not only our worldview, but also like our neurological response to something, right? Like, there could be a smell, and to most people, they're like, that's a beautiful flower smell. Well, someone else smells it and they all of a sudden think of something horrible that happened. And now they have an out of character response to something that should be positive, right? So our brain has kind of tricked us into having these feelings or experiential, like rethinking, right? You're going back in time, but it's never accurate when you're rethinking, right? Your memories are never completely accurate. And so I think that's where in some ways we've gone wrong, and why I think how psychology is doing such a great job of starting to go, hold on, the nervous system is confused, and we need to help our nervous system to understand things correctly. Like, it's almost like it's upside down, and it sees one thing as the other, and we need to start viewing things for what they truly are. And if we can be honest and stay on that like plane of understanding, then our choices aren't quite so just
reactive
off our rocker, right? We just need to be, either we deal with substance abuse or we deal with technology, and we just want to Netflix and chill for 5 hours. And it's like, is that really healthy? I mean, all the time? No. I mean, every once in a while, right? There's moderation. But I think there's a lot of confusion in how we're supposed to experience life as human beings. And I'm just as guilty as the next person.
Me too.
Sometimes I feel like knowledge is almost harder now, that when you understand it, you're like, darn it, I should know this. Or I should be able to fix this. But no, it is a work in progress, and it is never done until your physical body has said it's time to rest, right? So there's always that time to sift through your experiences.
So the last thing you said, why is it so difficult for us to, even when we learn about like, I want to be experiencing life through my body, right? Like, I want to experience vitality. I want to wake up and actually like feel sunshine and like move and experience things. And yet it's so difficult. And so it was really, I was listening to this podcast from this CIA agent who was essentially saying how manipulative technology, we all know this, but like how manipulative technology has, is designed to be and has become. And when while we think we're making our own decisions for how our life goes, essentially in a way that even the creators don't understand, right? Because the algorithm is like geared towards each person, but essentially you're being brainwashed, and maybe not even like maliciously, but in a way that we don't understand. We're being brainwashed and programmed subconsciously, like to make the decisions that we're making in life based off of just how much time. So it's like, it's hard because literally the way that the world is designed, the way we work on our laptops, the way we use our phones for entertainment, for connection, for many good things as well. It's just like, have some grace for yourself if you're listening, because it is hard, because you're essentially having to go against an entire generation and lifestyle that's being programmed to keep us numb and trapped and like addicted. And to like get up and get off of that, it takes intention. It takes like a lot of effort, or maybe reprogramming your life to not be that way. But I get it. I'm the same way. It's like, I know I feel better when I wake up in the morning and I see sunlight first thing. Like, I just know I feel better when I go on a walk. And yet every day I wake up, what's the first thing I reach for? My iPhone. So it's like, it's definitely, like you said, knowledge is beautiful. And yet sometimes it's like, why am I still struggling with this? Because we're human.
Right? Yeah. We're human. And if it was easy, it wouldn't be rewarding, right?
Yeah.
And when you were talking about brainwashing, and I know you probably studied a lot of this as you were going through your marketing degree.
100%, yeah.
But, I was fascinated, and maybe this is something you heard with the CIA person, but back after World War II, all of the heads of intelligence, they were either the ones who or indirectly were part of creating our news stations. So the ABC, CBS, all those were created by post-World War II intelligence officers because they saw how powerful it was and how easy it was to manipulate the human psyche. And like anything, we've heard that, anyone is capable of everything, right? And it's just the circumstances that are what's different, and I think we're all capable of elevating to the state of being that we want to. We're all capable of going rock bottom, right? All of those things. And the brain is such an amazing organism, right? That executive functioning is kind of what you're talking about, is that ability to regulate what you like, the importance of something in time, right? Like, I'm supposed to take a shower and get ready, but over here organizing my drawers way more interesting, so I get stuck on that, and now I'm late, and like, it's this constant struggle, right? Or I want to go for a walk every day, but then all of a sudden I get stuck in these spirals, right? So it's the first job is just understanding, right? And learning where your habits are, and maybe being vulnerable to ask those who you love around you in a safe way of, hey, where do you see my weaknesses?
Yes.
Hey, where do you see I struggle in this? And be open to hearing that, because a lot of times our perceptions of ourselves usually are actually worse than how other people see us, but they might reveal some things that might go, oh my gosh, I never thought that was actually something that was in my way. I thought it was helping. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Today's podcast is brought to you by the Premium Center for Regenerative Medicine and Stem Cell Therapy in the Northwest Center for Regenerative Medicine. Get back to the activities that you love without needing surgery. You can book your appointment at nwc4rm.com. Again, that's nwc4rm.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Rare Wellness Supplements. You can head over to rareplanthealth.com to get your supplements. My personal favorite is the premium fish oil filled with omega-3s. Again, you can go to rareplanthealth.com and get the supplements that you most need to support your health and wellness today. Lastly, this podcast is also brought to you by Rare Wellness. Rare Wellness is located on the South Hill in Spokane and is one center that provides all the wellness tools that you could need. Whether you're looking for a hands-on, premium, intimate yoga studio with a therapeutic emphasis, bar classes, Tai Chi classes, if you're looking for skincare treatments, injectable, hydrofacial, microneedling, organic spa treatments, if you're wanting to get therapeutic massaged or book functional medicine appointments to get down to the root cause of your inflammation, Rare Wellness is the place for you. Whatever your wellness needs are, they have it covered. So to book your appointment today, go to rarewellness.com. Again, go to rarewellness.com and mention this podcast for 10% off when you're booking. Okay, time to get back to the episode. So how does somatic movement help us when we feel stuck in those patterns or with our executive dysfunction?
Yeah. So a lot of times it's hard for people to verbally bring to the surface what's going on. Sometimes you ask a little kid, you're like, why are you upset? You're like, I don't know, right?
All the time.
Right? And and we're baffled, but it's a real thing. We're upset about something, or we're passionate about something, or all that, right?
Yep.
And so I believe that somatic movement bypasses our cognitive need to understand, and helps like bring that information to the surface. So then it makes it easier to comprehend. So you're feeling these emotions, all of that, right? So begin to just move your body, right? And that's something I love about Laban and those 8 effort actions. To me, all those actions have an emotion that feel kind of parallel to them. Like to me, it
Yeah.
feels like something that's aggressive, right? So if I'm feeling angry, I'm going to do some, dancing or movements that punching, not a human being or
Mm-hmm.
a wall or harm
Right.
anything, but how do you kind of put the effort through your body? And it'll be interesting because a lot of times our emotions are so strong, our brain can't understand what's going on, right? So then our body is a way to then kind of reduce that load, that emotional load response, and it allows the clarity to be brought to the surface. And
Yeah.
then we can go, wow, I'm upset because actually blank, right? And our body was helpful in us kind of finding that understanding within that emotional chaos.
Yeah.
So that's where I think somatic practices really have the power to do that. And sometimes you don't even have to have like a dramatic event. I know so many yogis, myself included, who started practicing at some point in time. And the ones who truly entered into the yogic philosophy and practice with the intention to improve themselves had a dramatic life change.
Yeah.
They changed things in their life. Like they changed jobs, they had relationship shifts, they had, big things, but they were things that needed to happen for them to grow.
Yeah.
And so that's where then somatic movement can kind of be this underlying thread, and it begins to pull away all that junk. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm not satisfied. There's something that doesn't align with what I believe in my core to be my purpose.
Yeah.
And that's when we begin to have the space to listen. And then we can understand, and then we can make the choices.
And it creates space for sometimes like when you're actually allow yourself to explore like those worst, and again, I guess I don't like the term like better or worse, but like those dark emotions that sometimes we try to hide from, it makes space for like the greatest light that we've ever experienced. And talking about movement, right, or dance, I'm sure that there's someone listening who's like, but I'm not a dancer and I don't know how to move. And um what I think is really incredible is like follow your body's intuition. Like sometimes like you don't need, sometimes like we're waiting for like a textbook answer, even like with somatic practices. I'm like, well, but it's like a lot of times your body, and this is something I love about yoga, right? Like you walk into a yoga class, when you have a good yoga teacher, they're like, listen to your body. What movements does it need? And you'll know, like, do I need a heart opener? Do I need to do some cat cows? Do I need to like get into my hips? Or like, what is it? I've heard like somatic movement. There's a lot of people who twerking is a somatic movement for them, or
Right?
pole dancing.
Yeah.
Like I've seen like all sort, like the whole spectrums. You can just lay a hand on your chest and like start breathing, and it's like, that is, yeah.
Right. I think you're speaking towards a specific vocabulary, right?
Right.
You don't have to have a vocabulary. You don't need to know how to do a plie or a downward dog or all
Yeah.
those things, right?
Right.
All they are angles put into a shape, right? So from there, it's just thinking about letting your body go. But a lot of that has to do with freeing our heart,
Yes.
right? We can't let go unless we allow ourselves to just be free in the moment. And
So good.
and I think that really comes down to our environment. Is it a safe environment to do so, right? So that's where it's important to find a room. If you're very self-conscious, just do it by yourself. No one has to know that you're
Nobody
doing
has
it,
to know.
right?
Nobody has to see. You don't have to make an
No, it's
announcement.
not. It didn't happen, right? But what you did do is give yourself that safe space, that container to explore how your body could be a source of communicative, like, how do I want to say this? It is, your body can begin to articulate a language that you don't necessarily have to cognitively understand.
Yeah.
You just believe within your whole being that it makes sense.
Yeah. And the why. Because I feel like it's always scary, right? Like taking that first step to like really embody, like doing that it's hard, it's scary, especially if you're not used to it or you haven't seen an example of it. And so I really think like coming back to that why, it's like tying for full circle, like to really experience and embody like all of life, like to be here for the life's experience. So like one day at the end of however many years we're blessed with on this earth, we can be like, I remember the moments, I remember what it felt like, right? Like I think it's worth it just for that. Like just to know that like I was there for the heartbreak, for the joys, for the grief, for the like serendipity, like for every like what it means to be human, to actually be present to that. It's so easy to miss. And like when you hear of people on their deathbed, it's like a lot of times they're like, I just wish I would have like lived. I wish I would have experienced it. Like, and so I think if you need a why to get out of your comfort zone and start to unravel some of the emotions in your body and just make space for this openness and expansiveness is like, I think it's worth it just for the vitality of like being alive and like living, you know? I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, no, I think it just begins with, do you desire to explore what it means to be more of who you are?
Yeah.
Right. I think everyone does desire that. It's just fear that holds us back. Right.
100%.
And I think that's also why we have all these resources, whether it's working with a somatic experiencing psychologist or a yoga teacher or a dance class or an ecstatic dance group or all those things, right? There are people out there who are trained to create those, what we call containers, that are these safe spaces for you to explore that.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you can do it on your own, or yes, you can find someone who can walk through with you through that. Right.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of your preference. And so I think when we're going to talk again is like, then like, Karla, great, awesome. So give me some tools to actually do this. And so maybe some suggestions about some exercises or techniques or suggestions about what you can do to really just practice it and see what it feels like to you. And something might feel right and something might not. And our job is to honor our experience. And that's where a lot of times we judge things too quickly. I always say to people, you have to at least take a yoga class 3 times, and then you can tell me if you don't like it or not. That's my only rule, right?
I love it.
And so, like anything in life, just try it 3 times. And if you don't like it, then it's not for you. And that's okay, right? But a lot of times our fears and our kind of lens through which we experience new things can cloud whether or not it's something that's meant for us or not.
Yep. No, that's so good. I love, don't judge things too quickly. So if you guys want to hear the more practical side of, okay, I'm in, I want to give somatic movement a try, I want to give somatic experiencing a try, whatever that looks like, come back to our next episode. We're going to film a part 2 and we're going to look at all of those things and more. Karla, thank you so much for being on. We're about to continue in a part 2. So check in guys next Friday for that episode.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Yeah.